Good afternoon, everyone. Please take your seats or find a comfortable spot. We're just about to start our program. Thank you all for coming. I'll try again. Thank you all for coming and welcome to Barnes and Noble's, where we will celebrate and discuss a book that has already won 2 awards. Forbidden Homeland, Story of a Diasporan. My name is Betty Tavitian Kilabian, and I'm Katia Karageuzian's sister, the author of this wonderful memoir. I'm also the graphic designer of the book cover, as well as all the promotional materials, and the ones that you have already seen on social media. I'm so touched and overwhelmed today because knowing what went on behind closed doors and all the years that we were going back and forth, and Katia was like, should I do it, should I not do it? But I always knew that she had this gift, a special gift of writing and storytelling, and I'm just so happy that she completed this dream. I'm very proud of my sister, Katia, for writing such a beautiful memoir with detailed research of our rich Armenian history, rather. Her dedication and passion for justice and human rights are truly admirable and a gift to the Armenian community and humanity in general. This was not an easy task. It took Katia 12 years to write this book. Not only because, as you all know, she's a very busy mom and a full-time pharmacist, and she also volunteers a lot for all Armenian causes and organizations. I'm very proud of her accomplishments and very happy that I could bring my contribution to the publication of a book that uncovers our family, ancestral story, and so much more. I now have the privilege to introduce to you perhaps the second most important individual in the publication of this book. Please put your hands together for the editor of the book, Guadalupe Montano.
Everyone, thank you. Wow, second most important, I think, is a little too much. It's all Katia, entirely her work. I think this book, the story in this book, and the way it came to me it's simply a revelation of things that are just meant to be. I think it is said that our ancestors want to be found, and they want their stories told, and this is very much testament to that. As an immigrant myself, I really resonated with the story, with the effort that it took to tell it. Also, because I serve on the County Commission for Human Relations. Our work is entirely about bringing LA County's various communities together to appreciate and to learn from one another. And if I may take a moment of privilege here, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Katia Karageuzian, who's also here. This has been entirely a labor of love. How it came to me, how Katia found me, I really don't know. Again, I think it was meant to be, and for all the effort that we put into it. You know, I could sit here and tell you about how we argued about whether this comma belongs here. Does this semicolon or a period? How do we want to spell this? The Americanized spelling, the non-Americanized spelling. But really, what this story is that it's a testament to the perseverance of a family and of a people and of a community, and how those traits really pass down to our children and our children's children, and it will find us and it will bring us together. And that's what this story did. I'm so proud to have been a part of it. I am humbled to be accepted and loved by the Armenian community because of it. And I'd like to introduce award-winning author, Katia Karageuzian.
Well, hi everyone. Hello. I have to wear my glasses. First of all, thank you all for being here. I see so many familiar faces that I hadn't seen in ages. Thank you for your support and encouragement. Hey, more people. I want to start by thanking my editor, Guadalupe. Honestly, every single part of this journey feels like it was destined. Only 2 weeks ago, I found out that she works for the Human Relations District Commissioner, which tells you that this story that has to do with human rights wanted to be found out, wanted to be found and told. So I want to start by thanking my editor. Believe it or not, even though we worked together for almost 2 years, this is the first time we are meeting each other in person. It was through COVID, and we worked online. Guadalupe took on the challenge of editing this very complicated story with professionalism and great patience, because I've taken so many breaks in between, and she was very patiently waiting for me to come back and pick up from where I had left off. When the editing was complete, I asked Guadalupe how she felt about the final product. And this is what she wrote to me. I'm emotionally invested. I want to see it out in the world, flying on its wings. It is such an incredible story of finding family, perseverance, immigration, trauma, finding oneself. Well, Guadalupe, our book is starting to fly and has already won 2 awards. I want to thank my family for their love and support, and especially my sister Betty, whose graphic design talents played and continue to play such a crucial role in promoting the book. So this banner, all the videos you've seen on Facebook, you name it, the flyers, it's her work. So let's give her a second round. A girl needs her girlfriends. I want to thank my friends, famous local Armenian artist Katia Karageuzian, and school psychologist Zarik Hagopian for their unwavering passion and support for this project and for always having my back. Thank you, ladies. Finally, I want to thank the fans of the book, which has become a conversation starter where Americans from different backgrounds are opening up and sharing similar experiences and challenges. I am grateful for the tremendous response from the Armenian American community, who appreciates the book's attempt in unveiling our truths and giving us a voice. Yes, this story needs a whole village to tell it, because it has been buried by the quicksands of time, changing geopolitics, and the sad fact that the stories of minorities are not told by mainstream media. Or worse yet, they are distorted and falsified by sponsored news. But here we are at Barnes and Noble, America's largest chain bookseller in the San Fernando Valley, where the journey of my book began 35 years ago, with an amazingly positive event in my and my family's life. It was 1988, my family and I had immigrated to the United States from Lebanon 4 years prior, and I was attending college. One day, while hanging out at the rooftop of Sierra Hall at Cal State Northridge, I made an innocent comment which resulted in finding descendants of my grandmother's long-lost relatives here in California. These were relatives she was separated from because of the Armenian genocide. Meeting these relatives changed my life forever. The desire to discover my family's story became the impetus that led me down a path that had been beckoning upon me since my childhood. You see, growing up in Lebanon, I would notice curious oddities that I could not put a finger on, as if there was more to our circumstances that met the eye. And yet I was too young to formulate the questions that I wanted to ask. Luckily, in the 90s, as I started researching, more and more books started getting published about the Armenian genocide as we, as a nation, started to come out of the stupor that we were hit by in the first 50 years following the genocide. We were in shock. Those were the years that were dedicated to survival and recovery. With my research, I went all the way to the 9th century before Christ, when Armenia was founded, and worked myself back. I read about the story of the Armenian highlands, that is the geographic name given by the world to the mountainous plateau onto which the Armenian nation spread for thousands of years, where it had its kingdoms, where it was a satrap of the Roman and Byzantine empires, and had its own empire at one point. And yet, the name Armenian Highlands is currently avoided because the majority of it now falls in different neighboring countries. Armenia is one of the most ancient nations on earth. Its story is the ultimate story of resilience and survival. Its 1,000-year-old monasteries and monuments belong to humanity and the history of the world. And yet, sadly, it is one of the few examples where a nation has been continuously attacked by its neighbors and its monuments destroyed for the purpose of taking over its lands. And that plan, unfortunately, continues today in the 21st century. It is best described as one of civilization's dark holes, where crimes against humanity have gone unpunished, and where human rights, history, truth, and justice have been and continue to be sacrificed in exchange to power, geopolitics, oil, and strategic partnerships. Where a genocide has been pushed under the rug by the world, and justice for it deemed inconvenient, as international lawyer Geoffrey Robertson describes it in his book, The Inconvenient Genocide. When we came to America, no one had heard of the Armenians or Armenia. So this was years before the Kardashians. And yet, one of my most surprising findings was that Armenia was a household name for Americans during World War I. In fact, I read somewhere that after England, Americans identified the most with Armenia. It was the Western and American missionaries and relief workers, among them NBA basketball Warriors coach Steve Kerr's grandparents, Stanley and Elsa Kerr, in particular, who had set up schools in the Armenian villages that were ruled by the Ottoman Empire, teaching the Armenians the Western ideals of freedom, independence, and human dignity. In fact, those schools were the ones who revived the Armenian language by printing new books in Armenian. So some of that part of Western Armenia had lost its language. They only spoke Turkish because of years of being ruled by the Ottoman Empire. So it was the American missionaries that printed Armenian books and basically revived and brought on the renaissance of Armenian language. In the aftermath of the genocide, the Americans organized a massive overseas humanitarian campaign with the slogan of "Save the Starving Armenians." The Near East Foundation, the oldest American non-governmental NGO, became the first of its kind where the concept of using famous actors and public figures to raise relief funds was introduced. That was a novelty back then. The foundation saved almost 1 million people from being massacred, including Greeks and Assyrians. On page 201 of my book, there's a picture of the 133,000 Armenian orphans that the foundation saved and settled in Armenia's Gyumri region, described as the largest orphanage in history. Imagine 133,000 kids who had overnight lost their parents. They were saved by America. Politically, it was the Americans and President Woodrow Wilson's administration in particular that pursued political justice for the Armenians by recognizing the Armenian provinces in the Ottoman Empire as part of an independent Armenia in 1920. Today, they comprise Eastern Turkey. It was the attention that Armenia was getting by the Americans and the campaign to kick Westerners out of the region that made the local powers unite in invading Armenia and dividing it between them in 1920. A campaign that has now reignited. By the time I arrived to America, America's involvement with Armenia's destiny had been all but forgotten, and a completely different political landscape had taken over. The same country that had vehemently condemned the occupation of Armenia in 1920 was on a completely different diplomatic trajectory. In 1991, Armenia gained its independence from the USSR, with its Soviet-era drawn borders, a sliver of its historic size. In the current global shift of powers, however, the policies of yesteryear seem to have picked up where they have left off 100 years ago. And while American news of the time constantly reported on the plight of the Armenians, and the New York Times wrote a staggering 145 articles pertaining to the Armenians in 1915 alone, just wrap that number around your head, 145 articles written by New York Times alone in 1 year. None of what is currently happening in Armenia and its province of Artsakh that Stalin's divide and conquer policy had placed within SSR Azerbaijan is being covered by mainstream media today. And yet Armenia is the only democratic country in that immediate region. History is being modified and rewritten by regional powers to allow for their political agendas and their alternate narratives, which are unfortunately going mostly unchallenged. So we are back to the time where might is right. And it's shocking that this is happening in year 2023. This is a very dangerous practice that can only lead to the downfall of civilization as we know it. Without accurate history, we as human beings will not know how to differentiate between right and wrong, which will lead to more injustice and humanitarian crises. As Americans, we are essentially all diasporans, and we need to educate each other about our histories in order to hold public officials and politicians accountable for the policies that they pursue in our names and with our tax dollars. It is only the knowledge of history. It is only with the knowledge of history that we can learn to create a better future for the generations to come. Since the anniversary of our immigration to the US is coming up, by the way, we landed on May 28, 1984, during Memorial Weekend, I will read to you the passage about our first night in the US from the chapter, This is California. My uncle and grandmother had immigrated years prior, so they picked us up from the airport. As we drove, every time we made a comment, their response would be, "This is California." So I'm going to read from that passage. My uncle was visibly elated to be surrounded by family after years of living alone. He had many plans for us. We were going to visit Disneyland, SeaWorld, the San Diego Zoo. The topics of conversation jumped to more serious subjects, like finding a job for my father, getting a driver's license, and enrolling my sister and me in public school. Quite late at night, we finally surrendered to a deep slumber in my uncle's one-bedroom apartment. Every inch of my body seemed to release itself into the open skies of California, devoid of any tension, worry, apprehension. I was in a fully safe haven until the first explosion shook the ground underneath me. My slumber was so deep that it prevented me from opening my eyes. The walls and windows shook with a second and a third explosion. Another bombardment. They are bombing us. I knew I had to get up and start running down the stairs to our second-story neighbor's apartment. But my body was not cooperating. Why wasn't I hearing our neighbor, Mrs. Mari? She is usually the first one to lead the way along with her daughters. Certain neighbors will take their Valium tablets and light up their cigarettes as always, I'm sure. Another explosion. Where is everybody? I finally was able to force my eyes open. My mother was standing at the entrance of the bedroom with my grandmother. It hardly rains in California, I heard my uncle say, let alone a thunderstorm. But on the eve of Memorial Day, May 28, 1984, there was a thunderstorm with lightning and pouring rain in Southern California. I decided that it was a good omen for a new life, full of opportunity and prosperity. And with God's grace, that is how it turned out to be. As immigrants, we will always be grateful to this great nation that has given so many of us a chance to the American dream. And this book is exactly that, about the American dream. And I'm so excited that you feel that it's also your story and we're sharing it together. Thank you all for coming and your amazing support. I love you all.
I am so proud of you. Katia is in my heart. She's a dear friend, and being alongside her in this, the last part of the journey, unfortunately, we hadn't met when she was actually starting to write the book. I just feel honored to be part of your journey. My name is Arpi Krikorian, and I'm an artist, and also honored to say Katia's friend. And we collaborated together on the bookmark, so I had a little hand in bringing all this together with Betty and Katia. So I just wanted to share my feedback on the book. And when I was reading the book, I told Katia I literally could not put it down. If you have not read the book yet, please pick it up. For several reasons. For me, it was personal because especially the Beirut section. I'm an immigrant from Beirut, and when we moved here from Lebanon, I was only 7 years old. So there were terms that I had heard about that I didn't quite know what they meant, but in the book, it explained everything that was not clear to me as a child and a young adult and an adult later in life. Also, I do pride myself in knowing Armenian history, but I didn't know anything. Reading Katia's book, I really feel this book should be in every single history class. Every Armenian and non-Armenian should own this book. It just brought so much clarity to me in my life and explained a lot of things about the genocide and why it happened and the whole immigrant process. It's both heartwarming and academic. I don't want to use the word academic because it's not like a textbook, but it should be a textbook. So please pick it up, give it to your friends, give it to your family. And in that note, if you have raffle tickets, everybody should have a raffle ticket. If you don't, raise your hand and Zadig will come around and give you the tickets. And we are going to be raffling off during the book signing 4 tote bags, custom tote bags, which I also helped to create, printed in my warehouse. And you get an extra book in there that you can gift to friends or family or keep yourself as well. And thank you again, Katia. And I thank you for doing this for all of us. You did the work for all of us. So we all should be giving her a big hand and thanking her. Now I will call up Zadi.
Oh, hold on. I'll be back.
Zadi is passing out raffle tickets, and I will take over the raffle disbursement.
Okay. I don't like to use microphones. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Katia is my friend. We're distantly related. We work together. It's such an honor to have been part of this journey. I remember a few years ago, which was talking about the book that she's read. I've read a lot of books on history and stuff. And she had printed the first few pages of the book. And we're standing outside of our committee where we had a meeting. I said, I'll take it home and I'll read it tomorrow. Then I took it home, I started reading, and just loose pages, I went, SHIT. This needs to be written and finished. This needs to be part of what the world is going to hear and read and see. As an educator, I'm a school psychologist, and I'm a genocide educator. And since 1974, I've spent as a psychologist, I've done what I was supposed to do. But my passion is history. I learned English when I came here in 1974, and I was a student. I had to take ESL. The first English book I picked up was Morgenthau. I know French, so I kind of understood the book. And since then, I've been researching Armenian history. What she has in her book is absolute truth. She has done an amazing research process in creating this book. And I think it should be part of every school's required reading, because the information in here shows how the genocide is not just 1915. It started during the Hamidian massacres in 1895, 96, okay? And continued on. And Artsakh is the continuation of what's happening right now. And we need to understand that an unpunished genocide, unresolved genocide will never end. And others will fall into the same nightmare unless people get educated and learn and become the voices of those who have no voices anymore. So you have done an amazing job. It's an honor, Katia. So I can keep talking forever. You know, we psychologists tend to talk for but you listen too. So it's time for questions and answers, and Katia will be here to answer your questions. So I'll step out of your way.
Anyone have a question
Questions?
about the book, about why she wrote it, about details inside the book? Anyone?
Any questions?
I have a question. I want to know, in writing the book, what was your biggest discovery? I know there were many, but what was the one that you went, I would have never known this?
My biggest discovery, which took me a couple of days to recover from, was the U.S. Senate's vote in 1920 upon the prospect of putting a mandate on Wilsonian Armenia. So let me back out and explain a little bit. So President Woodrow Wilson was, after World War I, when Turkey lost the war, the Allies basically started the distribution of the lands that were ruled by the empire and returning them to their indigenous people. So President Woodrow Wilson was given the task of deciding the border between Armenia and Turkey. And in doing that, he offered an arbitral award. And by the way, politically, arbitral awards, once given, they're not reversible. And that document with his signature is in the book. It's available online anyhow. So he basically recognized 4 out of the 6 Armenian provinces that were being ruled by the Ottoman Empire to belong to Armenia, and he awarded them to Armenia. So as this was happening, the Armenian delegation to the Paris Peace Conference, which was the conference that basically decided the terms of the peace after World War I, the Armenian delegation had asked if America could put a mandate, temporary mandate, over Armenia until Armenia becomes stronger and is able to govern itself. I mean, you got to realize that these people had just gone through a genocide. Their population had decreased dramatically. By the way, within the same agreement, France was given a mandate over Lebanon. That's how we speak French. And England was given a mandate over Iraq and Palestine. So America was asked by the Allies to put a mandate on Armenia. Imagine for a second my surprise and shock that America was gonna basically oversee Armenia until it became, able to govern itself. So that vote happened in 1920 in the U.S. Senate, and it did not pass. So it took me 2 days to recover from that piece of, because imagine if America had put a mandate over Western Armenia, it would have changed the course of history for that region. And the reason why they didn't put a mandate is because as they were talking about this, as they were partitioning the empire, the Ottoman Empire, previous foes, Turkey and Russia, realized that the Westerners are coming to their region. They were fighting a few years prior, so they joined forces. They joined forces and they said, we're going to do everything possible to kick America and the Westerners out of this region. We don't want them coming over and ruling over Armenia. No, this is our territory. They joined forces. In fact, Russia gave weapons and gold to the newly rising leadership in Turkey and helped them to reconquer Wilsonian Armenia. And together in 1923, they attacked Armenia from both sides. So Russia took over eastern Armenia and they awarded western Armenia to the Turks. So they came to basically share the territories among them. After that, in 1923, with the insistence of the Turks, they gave the province of Artsakh to Azerbaijan, a newly formed Turkic nation. And that's where, that's the hot spot nowadays, because Artsakh wanted to be independent, and obviously the country that it was put in is not letting it go. So that fact and history, it took me a couple of days to get over, because imagine how the region would have looked like and what our destiny as Armenians would have been if America had stood up for us then. The question is it going to stand up for us now?
So Russia gave Western Armenia to Turkey. What did they take, in exchange? What did Russia take in exchange?
Well, the decision was a collaboration and an agreement to make everybody happy so that they didn't let the Westerners come to their region. Actually, what the Russians thought was going to happen, or they were working on, was to convince Turkey to also join the USSR. And Turkey promised to do that. Okay? But once they got their independence, they changed their minds, and years later, they joined the NATO instead. So it's funny how time changes the course of destinies.
I have a question. Was this, every Armenian, we've suffered a lot with this genocide trauma. Since childhood, we hear the stories and, how our parents suffered. So at the end, when you get older, you want to reach to a, closure and the healing process. Was writing this book a healing process for you?
I guess you can say so, but for me, I've always loved reading, and I think knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, and that's why a lot of times it's suppressed. People don't want you to know the facts, because knowledge is power. I wanted an explanation, because my knowledge of the Armenian cause was in bits and pieces. Even though I had gone to Armenian schools, I didn't really know what had happened. Because as I said, for the first 50 years, all we were doing was recovering from a massive crime against humanity.
Do you have any other books that will be coming up? Because I read this book in a matter of less than a week. I couldn't put it down. So you're very talented, and I hope you write some more.
Thank you. This took me 12 years. I don't think. I don't think I'll do it again, but I'm tempted. I'm tempted.
It will take you less time.
Or a collaboration.
Oh, yes, definitely.
I have 10 covers.
Great book, by the way.
Thank you,
Great
thank you so much.
Everybody was saying that 12 years took you to write the book, and there were times that you wanted to stop.
Yeah.
What would you say to a future generation book writer? What made you continue, or what that little thing that gave you the oomph to continue to finish the book?
Great question.
I think without passion, nothing gets done. So the key word is passion. I was passionate about finding out what had happened to us. So if you're passionate about something, even if you take breaks, it's in you. It calls you back. So that's what it did. And Guadalupe was so kind to give me the space and time because I work, I'm running around, I have a family, so I've taken breaks in between. Plus, I wanted this very complicated story to be told like a conversation, which was very challenging. It's a very challenging story to tell because it has layers and layers of historical facts, all sorts of things, and it goes back hundreds of years. So passion, for sure.
I have a question. Again, sorry. Who would you hope, what is your biggest hope of the one person that this book gets in the hands of?
I'm gonna say two people or two entities. I wish it could fall in the hands of our ancestors so that they know that we are telling their story because it was pushed under the rug. Unfortunately, I'm tempted to say I want it to fall in important politicians' hands, but nowadays, as I said earlier, truth and history are not coming into play. It's all about power. This is the best democracy. It's an amazing country, but its foreign policies fall under a different set of rules. In the real world, I think the rule of the survival of the fittest is what rules. Okay, not human rights, not history, not justice. The survival of the fittest, and the survival of the fittest evolves around power alone. So yes, the justice is on our side. Yes, human rights says we have to go and save the people now who are under blockade and are being subjected to ethnic cleansing, but no one's lifting a finger because they need the other entities' oil, they need their strategic partnerships. So out there, it's the survival of the fittest, unfortunately.
Can I add something to your question? Is it okay?
Yeah.
This
Last
book,
question.
oh, thank you. This book should be read by every single Armenian person who reads English. Hopefully it will be translated. Our problem, and we always need to look at ourselves to see why we are where we are. We have to start with ourselves. We have such a lack of knowledge when it comes to our history, to the politics that have created our situation, who we have become, and how we ourselves, young people, and I work with a lot of young people, so I hear what they say, fall prey to the falsifications of history. And young people will argue with me, well, we have done this to Azeris and to Turks, and I go, hold on, let's back up here. Do you even know the history? They don't. Every single person needs to read this book. Every single Armenian and every single other person, everybody needs to read it. Because this is the history of humanity.
Yeah.
It takes genocide out of being a statistics to being a reality of one woman, one family, all families, all people.
Yeah.
And we're not the only victims of genocide. We're actually the gateway genocide. When you talk about drugs, gateway drug, we were at the beginning of the century. And then because nothing happened, nobody knew about it, we went silent out of fear. The other ones followed. They all got recognized, ours didn't. And slowly over time, our history got erased, our memory got erased, our genocide was buried with the bones. I'm sorry, we need to remember it. When people tell me it's been it's more than 115 years, it's 128 years. Murder, there's no statute of limitation in being tried for murder, right? We know that. The murder of millions of people, look how many people were not born out of the 1.5, 2 million who died.
Yeah.
They were all killed. Look at the brilliant people. One was born out of 1 or 2 that survived. How many more would have? Look at all the Armenians that have created, invented, and moved civilization forward in the last century.
So I totally agree.
I'm sorry, the world needs to file a lawsuit.
Yeah.
I mean, the MRI.
It was a
I'm not
big
going to go
loss.
through that now. I get all excited
I
about
want to
it.
add that not only was the loss of population that was lost to humanity, we are losing very ancient monuments that are
Yeah.
being destroyed right now so that they don't leave any trace of our civilization. And those belong to humanity. And even UNESCO, no, everyone is powerless. The other thing that I was going to say, I guess it goes back to Zohrab's question. I think we've been pursued and persecuted for hundreds of years, and a lot of us are having battle fatigue. And we are starting to become indifferent, like we've given up. Okay, they're strong, let them have it. So it's an individual choice, and it's our choice as a community if we want to still have a nation worth fighting for or not, because it's going to take a lot of fight. So I don't know if...
No.
What was your question?
No, I didn't have a question. I want to know how we're doing on time.
Has she signed books yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
I want to ask Gianna if we have more time.
Or should we go into...
Any other questions?
Our Barnes and Noble associates are hiding in the aisles, I think. Any other questions? Yes, I'm gonna be here to sign your books next. And we're gonna draw the raffle, so don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Oh, when do you want to do the
Yeah,
wrap?
can you do it before?
Let's do it now, since everybody's here.
Yeah.